Hi, this is Marlene, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. Whether you're watching a video or listening to a podcast, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. Links to videos or MP3 files can be found on miamighostchronicles.com. Go to marlenepardo.com for information on new book releases. I narrate several podcast series that can be found on major podcast platforms and can also be listened to via Alexa, Sonos, and other home systems. Look for Supernatural Storytime for scary storytelling, Nightshade Diary for classic horror and adventure stories, Stories of the Supernatural for interviews with different guests on the show. If you want to get noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird, you can visit Strange Than Fiction Stories tab at miamighostchronicles.com or find us on Blogspot. I want to thank you for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful. Hi everybody, it's Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, Stories of the Supernatural. Opening this part like the film Titanic, it's something momentous, like I can't get somebody's face, so instead I'm going to let you see some of these very old oak trees that I have. These are live oaks that I have on my property right now. I've had different people give me estimates that they're between 2, 3, maybe 500 years old. You could tell. And these are all Spanish moss hanging off of them. By the way, that was a dream come true. I've always had this thing about the Spanish moss thing. So talk about checking something off your bucket list. Well, it's off my bucket list, but it's all the time here. But anyway, how are you guys doing? Good, I hope. Oh, I'm doing okay. And I've had a lot of people ask me, oh, we want to see where you're at now. And what happened to all the chickens we used to hear crowing in the back? And what happened to the little dogs that were always running around behind you in the camera? Well, let me give you a little kind of walkthrough of where I'm at right now. As you can tell, I have a lot of gardening to do. I've been buying a lot of plants, and like I said in my prior shows, over here, you just can't plant whenever you want, like you wanted to in South Florida. Can you hear that? Yep. You have to plant in spring. There's more of a season here, so you have to plant at the right time. In other words, so yeah, as you can tell, I've got a bunch of plants. That right there, that's to clean out my my chicken coop, which is right over there. My son helped me. I helped him basically transform what used to be an old shed. I think it's made out of an old container into a chicken coop. And over here, this is one of my old guys. Well, he's not that old. His name is Stumpy. He got bumblefoot on one of his feet, and I cured him, but he still walks a little bit funny. So, but if I leave him in there, he'll get picked on by the other roosters. So I let him roam around however he wants. And again, this is some wood that's fallen down that I save it to burn it. Believe it or not, it's still, sometimes we get chilly days here. Yeah, and there's my other boy. He's one of my original boys. I would say he's fathered a good many chicks that have been hatched for me, even from Homestead. He's one of my, and we laugh because him and another rooster, when we didn't know what was what, we bought them both thinking they were hens, and they were just very young roosters. We didn't know what we were looking at. So much for that. And yeah, as you can tell. And here we've got some of them out here walking around. Okay, as you can tell, it's mid-afternoon, and this one that you see here, just like these two girls that double tag team on eggs, these are broody. These are he's blind. This rooster's blind. He's my big boy. I call him Big Boy. That's why I keep him in here. She's blind in one eye, which is why I keep her here, because if not, people don't realize how vicious chicken world is. And I've got a white silky back there, same thing, he's blind in one eye. And these two, as you could tell, as a matter of fact, I got to give them some medicine. They got a little bit of breathing thing going on. I gotta like, so they're like hospitalized or under treatment or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, and see how I don't know, for some reason, chickens love to lay eggs on plastic. And what are you gonna lay? Okay, 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 don't get upset, don't get upset, don't get upset. So anyway, the rest of them are in there. And of course, this right here is Jaja. She's about 8 years old. Yes, I know, I know. They do that. I love that when the roosters do that. People, it wigs people out, but personally, I love it. So, as you can tell, here's one of my fat girls. Yes. I leave this open and they pick at it all during the day just to make sure everybody gets fed, because sometimes, every once in a while, you get some that for some reason they get edged out of food, and the end of the day rolls around and they just haven't eaten anything. So anyway, guys, this is what's what. Oh, by the way, I have 8 chicks running around. There's one of them back. No, that's the mom. She surprised me. She went under one of these sheds right there, and I didn't notice. I was too busy running around. Too many things. And then all of a sudden I discovered she had hatched 11 chicks. And no, it's just that I have somebody working for me, and I don't really want to include them in here. I don't do that to people. I don't ambush them into film. But anyway, she hatched 11 chicks, and I realized it after she hatched them because she went under the shed. And I've got 8 of them running around here somewhere. And yeah, as a matter of fact, here's where they hang out. I've lost 3. I lost 3 of them to hawks, believe it or not. See, here they're hanging out. These are the chicks that were hatched under the shed. I got one naked neck. As you could tell, they had multiple. It wasn't that one hen that laid eggs. It was, she just took over the nest. And we have, and there's another one over taking a stand. But of course, in my blackberry plant, that's wonderful. That's great. And these are my last 2 broody girls that they decided to go broody and on eggs in my chairs because they love it. Okay, don't get upset. Don't get mad at me. Don't get mad at me. Cluck, cluck, girls. Cluck, cluck. They each both have about 9 eggs. So anyway, guys, I will keep you informed of what's up. But this is beautiful out here. I love it. It's lovely. It's great. And I'm still doing my farming thing, so I'll keep you guys abreast of what's going on. I hope you enjoyed this little look into Marlene's world. And that one, that blue, that's my husband's bird room. In case he has his own YouTube show, which is Henry's Bird Room, which all he has are parrots and canaries, and he gives you DIYs on how to take care of them. A bunch of other things. Hey, baby. Yeah, he's my good boy. All right, guys. It was great to talk to you.
Hi, everybody. This is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, Stories of the Supernatural. How's everybody doing? Good. I hope I'm doing good. For those of you watching the video, because I'm not going to have it on the podcast because you wouldn't get it. You just saw a clip of my new property with the chickens, because I've gotten a lot of emails and questions like, where are your chickens? In the other shows when you were living in Homestead, we used to hear these roosters crowing in the background and the birds and everything, because my office/studio was outside this wraparound porch where, of course, my birds and everything. So for those of you who are watching the video, you just saw me show the land where we moved to, and also a quick walkthrough of my chicken coop, because I have free range chickens, but I keep them in an area just to keep them safe because there's a lot of hawks and things out here. And I showed you some of my girls that are broody and on eggs, and my plants. So yeah, I'll probably, like I said, the podcast people, sorry, but there would be no context for what you're hearing. So, but anyway, guys, let's get to the good part. Like always, it has to do with who I have on the show. This is a first-time guest here on Stories of the Supernatural, and I know you're going to like it because I know all of you have asked me to bring on people that are psychic or, have had experiences with, whether they want to call themselves a sensitive, intuitive. There's a lot of ways to look at it. And today I have a gentleman by the name of Chuck Bergman. Now, this is the best part because I know you guys are going to like this. he was a police officer for many years. And I know a lot of people think, man, those two worlds will never cross. And as a matter of fact, I mentioned to him just right now that a lot of weird things sometimes go on in that field, whether you're psychic or not, by the way. But let me tell you a little bit about Chuck. He was born in Jacksonville, Florida. He's a third generation psychic medium who realized his gift at a very early age. And during his 32-year career as a police officer in Salem, Massachusetts, oh boy, he kept his gifts under wraps. No surprise there. Since his retirement and going public as a psychic medium, the A&E Channel and the Biography Channel have featured Chuck on the program Psychic Search, and he's been a repeat guest on many live radio shows, including Coast to Coast AM. In addition to holding sessions and giving readings as a medium, he has helped numerous police departments around the world locate missing persons and solve murder cases. He co-authored the book, The Everything Guide to Evidence of an Afterlife, and his autobiography, Psychic Cop, which came out in 2012. And of course, now he's retired from the police force, and he enjoys the freedom of using his gift, regularly holding group and private sessions in Middleburg, Florida, and phone readings with clients worldwide via Skype. He's passionate about educating people on the concept of life continuing after so-called death. So how are you doing today, Chuck?
Oh, what an intro. Thank you, Marlene. Nice to be here. I'm really looking forward to our little chit-chat tonight. I've been
you know what?
Show out and I love it.
Thank you. But I'm going to ask you what I ask all my guests. But even though part of your bio, said, obviously it's a family thing, but how did you figure out that you were one of those that got past that gift? How old were you?
You know, it happened when I was around 5, 6 years old, and that's got a little bit of a story to it, which is cute. Being that young, I was playing in the backyard, trying to put on what you'd call a police uniform. I was making it out of different things that I had. And when it came to the badge, I took a piece of metal and I put aluminum foil around it. And I kept trying to pin it on my chest, but it would fall off. It would fall off. And as a little boy, I'm in the backyard alone. I started crying, but then a soothing, deep, calming voice penetrated the air. I mean, it was just like someone standing in, actually it was like going to a movie, better than the Dolby system that you hear. And he used these words. He said, "That's okay, Chuck. One day you'll be wearing a real badge."
Ooh.
And just kind of disappeared. And the funny thing is I went in to tell my mom about it, and she didn't want me to get into this world. So what she did is she went out back, looked around, looked over the fence, made sure there was no one, talking to me and for real. But she knew what was going on. And every time I would tell her about some type of a voice or a vision, or even things I would tell her about herself that are getting ready to happen, she would always say, no, you're just a kid, you're imagining it. And it wasn't until after my mom passed away, when I was in my late 20s, that I learned that she too was a medium, and so was her mother, my favorite grandmother. So it kind of, runs in the
So
family.
she never told you then that she had that ability?
Never told me. It was kind of an odd thing. We had I had a vacation, I was on the police department in Salem, just north of Boston. So I came back to Jacksonville during the winter time to have a nice, sunny, warm vacation. And when I came down, I had a cousin from where my mom grew up in England coming over to also spend a little time. And we all joined at my sister's house. And then I found out that she had written a book about the afterlife and meditation. She was into this stuff, and she kind of spilled the beans. She said, "Well, your mother's a medium, and so was our grandmother." So it was kind of odd. I had to learn about it through her, almost by accident.
Yes. Why do you think your mom didn't want it? Do you think maybe she had did she have frightening experiences, or she just didn't want you to be that person, that kid or whatever?
Well, it was very, very sad. Back in the day, back in England, they didn't know what to do with people that were connecting with the other side or claiming that. So my mom's sister had the ability, And it's very sad. She ended up, the only thing they could do with her is put her in an insane asylum.
Oh my God.
And which is, I think she even died in the asylum. And I think that's where my mom was terrified that
No
would happen to
wonder.
me as
No
well.
wonder. Yes.
Especially coming to America and not knowing, how they would handle it here. In fact, I heard she would only give readings to her closest friends.
Right.
Boy, do I look young in that little silhouette.
Yeah.
I know it's not me.
Well, you know what? You know what's really funny about all of this is that I've heard of this before. That a lot of parents sometimes they want to protect their child because they fear there's a stigma. Like, I want you to be average because I don't want you to stand out, and then it's going to bring negative attention. This is not the first time that I've heard of that. Because let's face it, nobody wants to have their child picked on or things like that. So let me ask you, that voice, when you heard it when you were in the yard, it didn't sound familiar at all to you?
It did not. It sounded like an announcer for a
really
upcoming movie or whatever. I to this day, I remember how calm and how soothing it was. And I remember turning my head and looking around, and I couldn't decipher whether it was coming from my left in front of me or to the right. It was like all around me. It was really strange. And I did hear it at another point in my life, which is funny. I mean, I've only heard the voice probably 3 or 4 times total. And with the line of work I'm in, I've heard many people report hearing a voice. So, I know it happens. It can happen to people, and it's something you can't ask for. If it's going to happen, it'll happen.
Sure.
But there was one morning when I was in my patrol car about, 6 o'clock in the morning, and I was going to get off at 8 in the morning. So I'm taking a little ride. The streets were quiet. No one's out really. And just as I turned the corner to go on, one of the streets, I thought the radio went off at first. And all I heard was, now at this point, you got to understand, all this stuff as a child was in my past. That was behind me.
Right.
I've been to Vietnam. I've sailed around the world with the Navy. I've done all kinds of stuff. I'm on a police department. I've got a family, got 2 daughters. I'm living that kind of a life. But I turned the corner, and for some unknown reason, I hear the words, "You will be known as the psychic cop."
Whoa.
And to be honest, I looked in my rearview mirror. I thought it was someone in another cruiser behind me with the PA system playing a joke on me. And I almost had to even look up the word psychic. That's how out of tune I was with all this stuff.
Okay.
I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what was going on. But it's funny how when I wrote the second book, the autobiography, and I was thinking of the title, I said, it's got to be the psychic cop. What other route could I take?
There you go. Self-fulfilling prophecy in a way. Like, he gave you the title of your book before you even knew you were going to write it.
That's right.
That's a great story. So, okay, so here you are, you grow up, and like you said, of all places, not only are you a police officer, but you're in Salem, Massachusetts. So let me ask you, after you had that encounter, what happened? You go through adolescence, because I know a lot of times stuff happens when you're an adolescent. What happened? Did everything like fade to the background, or did you continue to have experiences?
There were a few. Even when I first joined the Navy, there would be more premonitions that would happen.
Really?
Or I would be in certain countries, visiting with other sailors and while we're on leave, and I would know my way back to the ship and no one else would. There were all these odd things that would happen, but I could never put my finger on it. I didn't really understand what it was all about, but it was definitely there.
That's see. And then you come back and you become a police officer, and let me ask you, did it ever, how can I say, did it ever overlap into your work while you were working at all? Like that you would get some weird or feeling or actually see or experience something while you were working?
Once in a while it would. I remember one time in particular where I was heading back to the police station. I was leaving my beat, heading back into the police station. And then it was like a wraparound movie around my eyes. It was like I saw a certain intersection that I knew was a very busy intersection.
Mm-hmm.
and I'm seeing a truck, I'm seeing smoke, I'm seeing telephone wires and poles down. And I'm going, what in the world why am I seeing all of this? But it was so vivid. Something made me go ahead and turn around and start heading in that direction. And don't forget, we didn't have cell phones, back then. So people
Yes.
weren't calling in accidents immediately. It could take
Mm-hmm.
4, 5, 6 minutes. And sure enough, I'm just driving casually there. And then I get the radio message to go to that intersection. And a truck, it was the weirdest thing. A guy had rounded a corner in a box truck, not a very big truck. And his rearview mirror hit a telephone pole, but apparently that pole was rotted.
Holy crap.
And because it was rotted, it started to fall and it pulled down every pole around it into the intersection.
Oh.
It was the craziest thing in the world. And all he had was a broken rear view mirror, or side view mirror rather.
Uh-huh.
And yet you had all this sparking going on and a little bit of flame here and there. But it was funny how I saw that probably
Isn't that
5
incredible?
minutes. And
I imagine your dispatch must have been, how did he know to go over there?
How did he get there so quickly? And I got to admit, there were other times without a warning, I would know to head to a certain area.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, I remember one in particular where there was a shoplifter, and I was seeing it. I was just seeing it happen while I'm driving down, like a little bit of a highway that we had there. So I said, I know that store. I know what I'm seeing. I pull into the parking lot just as they're on the phone calling the station, and they're trying to hold this guy, and he goes bolting out the door, but right into my arms, really. It was like, and they said, how did you get here so quick? How did you know? And I couldn't tell him. I just said,
it's like,
I just happened to, swing by to see how you were doing, and look what
you're
happened.
bad luck.
Yeah. And you know what it's like to keep it under wraps, because
Yes.
some will favor you and some will not.
No, of course, yeah. And now that people don't realize that, now it's become a little bit more mainstream because they have all these reality shows. But the years that we're talking about here, it was like if you became known as that person, like it was like, oh, yeah. It kind of that kind of stuff people wouldn't forget either.
Oh gosh, the journey has been amazing.
So what happened? So here we were talking about working in Salem. How was that? Because I was thinking that must have been like, wow. I mean, besides the actual work as a police officer, did you ever have any, did you ever see things that you're thinking,
really.
Wow, this is.
No, it was, unfortunately, I'd have to say it was very commercialized.
Yes, I know.
We had tourists from all over the world.
I know that.
And it was funny. One little story I like to tell is, on our armband and on the side of the police car, we had a witch riding a broomstick, and they still use that. They still use that on the police patch.
I think that's so cute.
Salem, and there it is. But tourists would love to take pictures, but especially people from Japan would try and sneak it because, in their culture, you don't take pictures of people without their permission.
Right.
But what I would do is in the back seat, I had another police hat and another leather jacket with the patch on it. So if I saw like a family trying to take my picture, I would come over, open the door, I'd put them in the driver's seat, hand them the microphone, and then I would take a picture of them driving the police car.
Oh,
and on
my
the side door was the great big emblem with the witch riding the broom. So
they must have loved you.
it was fun. And there were a couple of times I would get front page papers mailed to me from different countries where that photograph actually got published in the local papers.
You know what? I was thinking you're in a bunch of family albums, of vacation family albums.
It was a lot of fun. I did motorcycle duty for about 10 years. Mm-hmm. And again, with the tourists and all that stuff, it was an adventure. It was really fun. It was crazy, the people that you would meet.
Yes. Yeah. I've been to Salem twice, and I know that there's, like you said, there's a lot of the tourists, which is great when you haven't been there before. But there's but that's a great story as far as, that everybody wants to take the picture. It's like, but I think it's great. I think it's fantastic that they've stuck to the emblem for the city.
Oh yeah.
They've kept it like that.
You should see it like every September, right on through the end of October. It was wall to wall people.
I can imagine.
The
Oh
locals
yeah.
knew you can't even walk in the downtown area. You can't park anywhere, and just massive amount of people around as Halloween is approaching. So
Oh yeah.
it's pretty major. It's very big.
So you were there for a long time. So what happened? How did you go from, being a trained observer, factual, everything that you need to do when you're a police officer, and start working with your gift?
It came, first of all, I'd like to say that a lot of police officers develop their intuition because they have to.
Mm-hmm.
If you know a little bit about that stuff. If you're
Yes.
going to stop a car, you better be observant. And if you're talking to the driver and also taking in what the passenger's movements and what's going on, you have to be on your toes. And you
Yeah.
also have to rely on that gut feeling, as they call it, or your intuition.
Sure.
And I think you get to develop it. And what I like to do is when I had a strong intuition on a certain person or whatever, I would approach the car and like almost already know, be careful, this guy's got a warrant. And then it was
Okay.
fun to find out that I'd call the name and everything in, and sure enough, there'd be a warrant.
Yeah.
That didn't always work, believe me. There were a couple of
No,
times
I know.
I wish
I
it
know.
had, But
Yeah.
I think we developed that process, and most officers, even off duty, where they're having a meal at a restaurant or at a gas station, that antenna is always up. So if you combine that with having the natural ability, it does strengthen it. I was just so curious about how all of that worked. I started taking meditation classes, and
Okay.
that was the key for me. It opened the door to hearing spirit better and seeing images and feeling the energy and just knowing how to work it.
And I've heard of that before. It's almost like, it's been there all along, but now you're actually like, even though, like you said, and I can understand where maybe, if you would have tried to do that while you were still employed, it would have been a problem for you. It would have been a conflict. Okay. But then once you're off the force, it's like, okay, now I can
Boy, that's when the floodgates opened, I'll tell you.
yes. So how did you, how's this? Like you had that experience as a child and you heard this person speak to you, which for all we know, was it that a guide? Was that a deceased person? Who was that? How did you have that first moment that you realize whoever I'm listening to is somebody that's passed away? Did they give you something?
Yeah. My probably the one that moved me, I don't know the right word, but I progressed from a curiosity element in my life to a positive believing that it is the spirit of the person that I'm connecting with. And the reason I'd say that is it all happened one night when a family called me from California. Their son had been missing for 8 months, and they didn't know, dead or alive. They said they've got the media working on it in California. They've got search parties. They've got helicopters, you name it. And in 8 months' time, nothing. So I didn't really want to do the reading because the last thing I wanted to do was say, your son is dead, and then find out later he comes home and you put them through all that pain and suffering for no reason. But what happened was there were such powerful validations that it was their son coming through that we get to the point where I just happened to say to them, I said, because they had me on speakerphone, I said, did your son drive a green Chevrolet pickup truck? And the father said, yeah, and it's missing. They haven't found that either. I said, okay. I said, I'm getting that he's dead. The body is next to the truck, but this is where it gets kind of crazy. He showed, as I'm looking out my office window into the back wooded area where I live here in Florida, I'm seeing the number 020 floating by in the air, almost like you see on a weather map when they've got those little clouds, those silly, whatever you call those little emojis going by. So I asked him in spirit, I said, is that at the heading on a map? And he said, yes, from my parents' home, go north 020 degrees. And then I said, okay, but how far up that line would I go? And then he put me inside the Chevrolet pickup truck and showed me the trip meter. This is how vivid this scene was.
Wow.
And it came in at 159 miles, 020 degrees north from the house. Now, I love validations. So what I told the dad was, I want you to take out a map. From your house, go north 020 degrees. And I said, you called me. I didn't call you. All I know is you're in California. The area that this should put you in should be a two-part name, he's telling me. The first part starts with S as in Sam. Then you have the next part, which is N as in Nancy, but I can't make out the name. And he said, well, yeah, you just put me in the Sierra Nevada mountains.
Oh.
So now when you start getting those kind of pieces pieces of the puzzle that are that accurate, then the next thing that happened was, we conclude the reading, but I even got into why he fell off the mountain that he fell off. I got into him being engaged and it falling apart, and he was depressed. Everything happened. So what happened was the very next afternoon, I get a call from California, the detectives out there. The first question was, Mr. Bergman, have you ever been to California?
I bet.
I said, no, I've been up and down the East Coast, but never at that point in my life, never out west. And he said, well, we flew a helicopter over the area and we found the green pickup truck. We had to get up there on ATVs and the body was next to it.
Oh.
And don't forget, this is a young man that had been searching 8 months.
I was about to say.
And here they are getting one. I'm not saying every reading will turn out that great. Most of them do, but what hope for families that are missing people?
Sure. And especially after that length of time, as difficult as it must be to basically get confirmed what they maybe already suspected, I think it would be worse not knowing.
Everyone wants to know. Who wouldn't? It's always that question mark otherwise. Or are they still out there and do they need my help?
Right.
Either way, it's like,
right.
It's just, to me, the hard part is, well, why couldn't you just go to mom or dad and, enter their dream state or do something to contact them and let them know? It's just crazy the way it all works.
And you know what? And it makes you think, who knows if mom and dad might have sometimes dreams like that, but they don't know how to interpret it. Yeah. Or they look at it as, they don't believe it. In other words, they just think it's wishful thinking, kind of. In other words, they don't understand the symbols that maybe
You're right. They don't. And I was amazed the other day that someone who was a, what do they call it? A ghost hunter. And I've been a little bit into that world where different people have asked me to go with them. And it's funny, their equipment, you'll love this. Their equipment would pick up nothing, but yet I would pick up the spirit in the room. Of course. And give accurate information to the family that wanted them there in the first place to identify a spirit in the home. So, it's kind of weird that all the equipment, all kinds of stuff out, they're going to pack it up and everything. And I'm just sitting there kind of observing. And then all of a sudden I came out with the truth as to what happened in the home. So it's kind of telling me, but what happened in this case is on Facebook, a person who was a ghost hunter, for some reason brought my name into it, and this is local, and said that we don't use psychics, they're all frauds, and I hate that term. They're milking the public and scamming everyone, and the typical stuff you're going to hear from a skeptic.
Exactly.
But the beauty was maybe 3 people got on the bandwagon with her. Probably 80, 90 people that have had readings from me,
right,
or have seen me on television, have said, you're wrong. This guy can really do it. And it's not phony, and it's not, and it's almost like I wanted to go on and tell her, like, I've done better than your equipment. Not that that'll always happen. But...
I tell you, because I tell everybody, because I've been doing investigations since the 90s. I tell everybody, I was doing it when you had to pay to develop film. My audience must hear me say that. Wow. And I use it as in context to how long ago, because a lot of people always think of just digital. Once upon a time, you had to pay to develop sometimes just a picture of black, if as far as when you were trying to capture something, and maybe you had a cassette. In other words, it was much basic. And I tell everybody, first of all, you paid more attention to your senses. But after the introduction of all these gadgets and stuff, I tell them, look, there's been times, okay, that the best instrument there is the psychic or the humans that are there.
Yes.
Okay.
But, I want to say, since you know the field, you're talking about getting the film developed and all of that. What about all of your time that you're putting into it and the countless, the hours of listening on headphones or looking at waveform on a audio and just checking every little bump that you see in case. And even then you have to listen because it may not show a waveform. It may not be loud enough. So there's a lot of work that goes into the ghost hunting and analyzing all of the data that you take back.
Well, there's a running joke among anybody that's done this for a while, because that's another thing that I tell people, because I tell people either are interested in joining a group or want to use a group to come to their home. I said, you need to look for somebody that's been together for a bit, for a while, because a lot of these groups, sometimes they dissolve maybe within the first 2 years. Is that there's a running joke that you get phenomena happening either before or after you've put either unpacked or haven't packed, you just finished putting away your equipment. It's like, It's almost like, wait. And then once you've rolled everything out, nothing happens. And of course, about the only thing you've got is your senses. And if you have witnesses, did you hear that? Did you see that? And of course, or you haven't unpacked your stuff. Everything's still there.
I know.
And that happens quite a lot. And then, or after you put everything away, after what you think is a really boring investigation because nothing happened. And then it's like, all right.
I was having fun. They had what the K2 meters are. And
yeah,
I think they even had a laser disc running. They had all kinds of stuff running. And I'm just Mr. Curious. I was, for a few years, the end of my career, I was computer analyst for the department. So I love equipment. I love scanners and cameras and all that stuff. So anyway, they're setting up the equipment and I'm asking questions. Everything's going great. And then I'm sitting back, letting them do their job. And out of the blue, I'm just sitting there because the house they were checking out, supposedly their 21-year-old son was being kicked out of bed, scratched, and, injured by some spirit in his bedroom. So we were in their little guest house next door. That's where a lot of activity had happened. And we're watching the meters. And as far as we could see, nothing happened. And I'm sitting there just like, drinking a Coke or whatever. And finally I looked around and I said, hey, I just saw a crazy vision. Can anyone relate to this? I've got like a 10, 11-year-old kid. He's up at bat. He's ready to swing. He's in his batting, baseball uniform, batting helmet, chain link fence behind him and crowd behind the fence. Any idea why I'm seeing that image right now? And everyone's looking at me like I'm nuts. And there was no reason for me to come out with that kind of vision, but I'm glad I did because they packed up. We went into the big house. We're on the first floor and they're, trying to get whatever they can get. We go up to the second floor. We go into mom and dad's bedroom for a while. No activity. We go across the hall, open the door to the son's room where everything is happening. And his entire wall is a mural of him playing baseball when he was younger. He's up at bat, the chain link fence, the whole thing is right there, to the point where the ghost hunters said, I hope I'm not being derogatory when I call them that. I hope that's what they go by.
Yeah.
But they were afraid to go in the room at that point.
They're like, oh, shit.
Oh, no. Of course, I was shocked too, because when I saw the image earlier, I had no idea. And then I said, why did I even say anything? Look how they're looking at me as a fool, like.
Like, where are you coming up with this? And let me, now I'm curious about, was there, why were they, did this start happening or did you guys ever identify what was causing that?
It was one of the hardest things I've had to do, and I did it. And because I haven't mentioned any names or anything, I'm going to give the ending of it because I don't feel, and what I'm about to say is the truth anyway.
Right.
Once the family came back home, it's 3:00 in the morning, and they were really good to us. They even catered a a meal for everyone, and they had a large cooler with cold drinks in it for everyone. And they were very nice people. And the ghost hunters said, all we can do is go back and analyze what we have. And then Mr. Big Mouth, me, for some reason, I had to say it. I said, Mom, I want to ask you a question because, it had involved a son. I said, did your son have a twin that died?
Oh, God, I knew you were going to.
And it was the way she turned and looked at her husband. You knew it was a yes. And this is in front of the son who didn't have that knowledge. He didn't know he had a brother.
Oh, man.
He didn't know. So it was really, but it went off very well. I mean, you could hear a pin drop in the room. It was like, what the?
I can imagine what everybody's head must have turned around and looked at you like, oh, here he goes again.
Good. And sure enough, that's who was. And I went into an automatic lecture to the son saying, look, you've got all this stuff, you're living a wonderful life and everything. You don't appreciate it. You're rude to your mom and dad. And I knew all this stuff about him that was coming from his brother. And that's why his brother was so upset. But the beautiful thing about the whole story is I learned about 2 months later that the young man totally changed his attitude and all the trouble disappeared.
Because I was going to ask us, had this been going on for years, or was there like
years? Yes, they were getting ready to move, and this was a huge, gorgeous home right on the water.
Oh, I imagine those people, when you said that, Chuck, they must have been, what? Like there was no way. There was no way you could have known that. Like there's no research. It's one of those things like, and I imagine that probably was the convincer for that kid.
The fun part of the story too that you might appreciate. That night I was on a date with the first date with this girl that I really liked. And I said, hey, I'm going to go watch these ghost hunters. You want to go with me? She said, yeah, I would love to. But I think it creeped her out because I never got to go out with her again.
She was saying, he's going to read my mind. No.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. People worry about that all the time. Hey, I've got a great story on that. Want to hear it?
Yes, of course.
This is a great one. When I was married, I'm not now, we were at the fair and with our son. And as we're walking around, my wife at the time is a school teacher. And she says, oh no, here come a couple of the girls that are, my students. And she said, don't say anything about what you do. I said, okay, no problem. I won't. So they come over, they're talking and everything and, introducing each other and stuff like that. Well, they're getting ready to walk away. And I said, hey girls, don't forget corn on the cob. And I don't know what made me say it, but I said it. And they screeched like, they took off running. So my wife looked at me and said, why did you say that? I said, I don't know. I just saw it. And I did. I saw corn on the cob rotating like it was being, cooked with butter dripping off it and everything. I saw that while I was looking at the girls getting ready to leave. So I just yelled it. I said, hey, don't forget corn on the cob. So what happened the next day, my wife came home kind of angry at me and said, you told me you couldn't read minds. I said, I don't. And she said, well, you did last night. I said, no, I didn't. And I said, why are you saying that? She said, the two girls already knew from the web what I do for a living. So while they were approaching, the one girl said, be careful, her husband can read your mind. So the other one said, well, then block what he's seeing and hearing. And she looked up at one of the signs and saw corn on the cob. And she said, keep saying corn on the cob, because they told the story to my wife. And then she repeated it to me. And I went, now I know why they were showing me corn on the cob.
But see, that's the thing is that you think at that point, this is so random.
I know. It's like,
that's what's corn on the cob.
And now you can bet they went back and told all their friends, be careful. Her husband reading your mind.
Yes, he'll discover your deep, dark secrets. You know what? It's really funny. And the reason why I said that is, when I was doing as a hypnotherapist.
Whoa, back up. Hypnotherapist?
Yeah.
I am so interested in that field.
Yes,
Go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt, but
No, of course not. But
I'm intrigued
there's a
by
lot
it.
of people that think that when you go into hypnosis, this person will, in other words, you will just spontaneously start like saying your deepest, darkest secrets, and you have to calm the person. Like, in other words, that you go into like a deep sleep of forgetfulness, and in the meantime, you're like talking about all the things that you never want anybody to know. And it's like
Yeah.
a lot of my clients who were first time clients for hypnosis, I had to spend a considerable amount of time explaining to them. And then I would just even put them into a light hypnosis so that they could see you didn't fall asleep, you didn't go to another planet, another dimension, none of that. And it was so funny when I say something about one time a police officer.
Oh.
It was off duty. There was no, it wasn't obviously, and because a lot of people also that I work with, which is for relaxation, like. So I said, look, just and I see him. He grabs his gun, and I'm like, where are you going with that? Where do you think I'm going to send you? It's just to relax you. Like, I don't know. He thought I was going to like Star Trek, transport you to where. It's like, where I'm going, I'm taking my gun with me. But I've never forgotten that, because it was like, okay, let me explain a little bit better what hypnosis is. But yeah. It's really, that's why I said that thing about that date that you had, that she was like,
oh yeah,
people's imagination goes off in directions. But I guess in that case, she wasn't too far off, though.
Well, once in a while I do pick up thoughts, but it's very rare, very rare.
I know. But
still
most
believe there's
you can automatically
issue.
meld.
Getting a little feedback there.
But is it okay now?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're good.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, it seems to be random. I remember one other time too. One of my nieces was, when I first moved to Florida, she was dating a police officer in another community. And when he met me, all we did is shake hands. And right away I said, "You're working on a murder case, aren't you?" And he like pulled his head back, like, "Yeah." And I said, I don't know why, but I want you to know it is the husband, and he's killed before. And he said, in our community, we have only one other unsolved murder. And it just so happens that the missing woman now that they suspect he murdered, his wife, also murdered back 20 years ago when he worked for that lady, the only case that's unsolved in that, that community. And that was just by shaking his hand. Huh?
Wow. Did you ever know what happened with that? No, I'm just curious. It's like,
last I heard, he was, before they could even get to court with it on murdering the wife. Mm-hmm. And, the evidence I gave was right on the money about his wife, and even a grandchild, and described the grandchild, everything about the situation, I was able to come up with. And he ended up, from what I understand, maybe even died in jail over non-related charges. And that happens all the time.
Yeah.
So they don't even get charged with the murder because they've done so many other things that catch up to them.
Oh, that now with the DNA, even though sometimes it works really slow. That guy out in California, the Golden Gate Killer, they would think it was several people, and they found him. What was it? Because they got a relative DNA, and it matched up with from a really old crime scene.
It's amazing they kept the evidence that long.
Yeah, I know. That was incredible. But and what's, sometimes people, like you were saying, well, he was suspected of that murder and maybe one. And then you think, it makes you wonder if in between he killed other people, they were just never found.
Oh, absolutely. There are. That happens.
Sure. And
how people can do that, I'll never understand.
People don't realize that there's sometimes, especially when they find, even with DNA, sometimes skeletal remains, they don't have an identity really to go with it. If they find somebody out in the field, and all you've got is a skull, sometimes it's really difficult to even find out who that person is to begin with, as far as tracking down who might have had a motive to kill that person.
True. I've got some of the murder cases I've worked on are reversed. They're not murder at all. And it's kind of nice that the family get to hear the truth from their son or daughter on what happened.
Right.
The first one I did out of this country was, I'm here in Florida, and
Mm-hmm.
over Skype, I'm helping the police department out in Germany.
Oh, really?
And it was kind of funny because I'm describing an area to them, with water and like it looked like a boat ramp going down, like cobblestones into the water. And I described everything around it and how far it would be, how the shore across was, like right, you could almost jump over to it. So it
Right.
wasn't a very likely area to find a body. And I said, he's telling me that he went into that spot and the body went down to the right, and that's where his body is right now. And then he told me it wasn't intentional. He was drunk. He slipped on the rocks. He fell in. He lost his footing, and went under, and that was it. But the funny thing is, he says, they had me on speakerphone, and the dad was there and everything, and they said, well, that's not true because we found that spot that you're talking about. That's where we were with divers today, and we searched the whole area. And we talked about that. Could the body be left or right? And we all agreed there was no current to pull it in either direction. So we felt that the divers did their job and there is no body. And I said, well, he's telling me that you overlooked it, but he's off to the right. And boy, the next day I get a call that they found the body in that water off to the right. So, they still would have found it without me, but it was pretty, if you could.
You never know, Chuck, because if they had already searched that day and they hadn't found anything, chances are they were not going to return and search that area again.
Yeah, typically they pull up stakes and off they go.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be careful with this work too. I know I was watching one that I forget on a YouTube or something. It was really interesting where a model, a blonde model, was involved with a photo shoot near a highway. And all of a sudden she went missing and all this stuff.
Right.
So they called in a psychic. The psychic said, this is where you want to go. And there's a big boulder there. And next to that is where he buried her body.
Okay.
They go there and they're digging and they find nothing. So they're kind of like saying, okay, I know what it was. While they were digging, they're ready to give up. And they find her body like on the other side of the city somehow, So
Okay.
what the medium gave was incorrect. And when they aired that on the news, a retired detective recalled working on a case like 30 years earlier where they dug up a white or a blonde model at that exact spot next to the boulder, but they were 30 years off. See what I mean about how you got to be careful when you start receiving information and giving it out. And
let me ask you, did they, on that original case that was 30 years prior, did they find the body there? Or they just
right next to the rock where they were now digging, looking for the current model, and there was nothing there. But then they get a call that they find the body on the other side of the city. But the psychic was right. There at one point there was a body of a blonde model where they were digging, and it was a freak thing that.
Right, that's what I'm thinking. It's like, what was that psychic tuning into? Like, it's almost like a mixed kind of thing. Like,
it's a tough world for anyone listening to think that they're going to just, hey, I've got this ability. I'm going to go out and start solving all these murders.
yes.
One of the hardest ones I did was a guy who was he was shot with a bullet to the top of the head. And when I gave the family the information, I had given so much prior. I held that. I didn't tell them right away. And then when I got all the other information, it was 7 days later that the body did show up. And I'd said he's laying in very shallow water on his back and bullet in the head. And they do an autopsy, police scene, and all of that. And here's the strange part. The medical examiner deemed it suicide by drowning. And when the family got a hold of me and everything, they said, Chuck, how could you be so far gone? They said, you were right about the area. You were right about the water. But they said, no bullet. I said, oh, no, there's a bullet. There's definitely a bullet. How do you drown in 4 or 5 inches of water laying on your back?
Right.
I said, so, think about it. There's more to this. Anyway, they had to fly me across country. I don't want to say where, but they flew me up there. I had to talk to a judge. They signed a an order for second autopsy with a different medical examiner,
Okay.
and in minutes found the bullet.
Okay. So you're telling me that first medical examiner missed the bullet in the head?
Yeah, but then I find out this was mob connected.
Oh.
And
Oh,
either
okay.
A, the Emmy got paid off for it. The Emmy was warned, you'll be on the table next if you don't
Yeah. But hey,
cooperate.
how do I convince him that he drowned? Don't worry about it. Just say
I
that.
know. And it's so funny because I'm up there when I heard it was mob connected, I said, I got to get back to Middleburg. I said,
Hey, what's the next plane going
yeah,
out?
get
Next
me out
flight.
of here.
But yeah, and you would think it's like of all the places in the head, like how are you going to miss a bullet of all things?
So I saw the autopsy pictures, and a first grader could have put his finger in the hole and said, there it is.
There it is.
This guy, in fact, he was bald and a little suntan, and it was just a big black circle up there.
It's like, man, I wonder what happened here. Yeah, and I wonder, it makes you wonder, like, how does that guy's credibility, it had to have suffered after that.
Oh, they fired him, and it went.
Okay.
It was very big news that he was charged with it.
Right.
With, falsifying the report and the autopsy, and that's a serious offense.
Absolutely, it is. It is. He's making it look like accidental death, I guess, is what you call it, if you drown in 5 inches.
Yeah, and then
versus murder.
he tipped off some damn psychic out of Florida came here and we had it made. He ruined it,
Yeah, and you're like, yeah, well, I gotta go.
It's funny how that whole thing came about, even because one of the participants, one of the family members, was in Florida, and the guy had only been missing. But when I got his name right, his job right, and I started saying he's in spirit, he's not alive. But it wasn't until 7 days later that they found that he in fact was dead. Okay. So the whole thing was pretty amazing.
Chuck, have you ever come across cases where people think that person is dead and they're not? They just decided that they want to leave their old life behind. And it happens, I guess.
I did one famous one, and I don't know where we stand on it, but the person that had the reading, remember the one with Olivia Newton-John and her lover who went out on the boat supposedly and either fell overboard or relocated?
I remember something about that.
That goes back many, many years, probably 30 years.
Yes.
And I gave a session to a woman, and I didn't know why that was coming in.
Okay.
I said, why am I getting this? And I'm seeing Olivia Newton-John. I'm hearing her songs. I'm getting all of this, and turned out that she used to go to meditation classes with her fiance, the one that was missing.
Mm-hmm.
So for him to give me the information from spirit,
right,
he knew her, and that's why he was giving, the whole scenario.
Right.
And when she booked the reading, it wasn't for that. She wanted a reading about her mom or whatever. And that I said, I don't know why I'm getting Olivia Newton-John, and I don't know why I'm seeing a guy fall off a boat, and I'm seeing this, seeing that. But then later, supposedly they spotted him in another country. He was still alive, but there was never real proof of that.
Right, because I know sometimes people even do it for insurance purposes. I mean, you hear a lot of times, people, I know, sometimes people, unfortunately, the family, there's people sometimes that they just don't want to be that person anymore, and they just leave. Like, I'm gone.
They want to disappear, and a lot of them get away with it when they do it.
Yeah. Yep. It's not, but and how about, have you ever had an encounter where you've had maybe somebody come to you in spirit that doesn't have per se a family looking for them, or coming to you saying, hey, I'm trying to find what happened to this person, and they come to you saying, hey, help me get found or identified or anything like that?
I don't think I've had that yet.
But you know what I'm talking about, right? Because all these things, of course, happen because there's somebody out there in the land of the living who's saying, hey, I need to find out where or what happened to this person. And then, of course,
that one I've had many times. And I'm very meticulous on, I want proof that it's them coming through before I commit.
Okay.
I don't ever want to tell anyone, oh yeah, your son or daughter or neighbor or whatever's on the other side, when they're not. That would be, and I've
Yes.
got an agreement with my own spirit guides, that if that ever happens, I'll never work on that type of case again. I'll never
Let
do
me
it
ask,
again.
now that you mentioned spirit guides, how did you encounter or identify your spirit guides that were going to help you with this work?
They picked me, to be honest. They picked me, and it's like they just started doing crazy things. Just here's a fun example. One day
Okay.
I'm at work at the police station, and they call me in my office and said someone in the lobby to talk to me, and it was a friend of mine. So at the time, I was also doing video editing and stuff like that. We had a super modern auditorium, with the theater seats in it and all that stuff.
Right.
And in the back, we had probably $100,000 worth of editing equipment with all kinds of stuff that most of it I picked out. So it was the perfect place for me to sit and talk to my friend who was having a little bit of trouble in life. So as he was standing there talking to me, I'll never forget it. I'm looking at him and I'm trying not to laugh. And what's happening is I'm seeing two large hoop earrings on this guy, and he's not the type of guy to do any of that stuff.
Right.
I started laughing and I just said, is there any reason why your mom is coming through to me right now and I'm seeing you're wearing hoop earrings? I can almost pluck them off your ears. That's how clear they are. And he just put his head down and he says, no, but last night, my son, I haven't seen him in a few months. He came home and he had all these piercings and tattoos and all this stuff. And when he came in, he said he wanted to move back home. And I kicked him out and said, no, you're not staying with me until you get rid of that stuff. And he kicked his son out. And his mother was really upset about it. So we sat and we had a long chat about it and everything. And bottom line, he did let him back in and they, things kind of healed. So it was good.
Okay.
But I'll never forget how real those earrings look to the
Oh
point that
my, that is incredible because you must
I was
have
laughing.
been where did those hoop earrings figure in this?
And what I said is, hey, you weren't wearing those when you walked in. And as soon as I said hooped earrings, he knew what was going on.
Isn't that incredible?
It's
And
crazy.
probably, I imagine, of all the things, like you said, that he was like didn't want to compromise on, was that his son was wearing all these piercings and all this stuff.
Yep.
Wow.
I call it a screenplay upstairs. When they're ready to give stuff, they give it in such a fashion, it goes beyond that of what a human would ever be able to think up. Sometimes their precision is just better than a movie director.
So let me ask you, have you developed like a system of symbols? Like when I see this, I know that what they're trying to tell me is that.
But there's new ones every single reading I do. There's new ones. But yeah, there a lot of them I recognize or I'll know what they are. And sometimes, like the one I did yesterday, it sounded silly and I didn't even want to say it. But the woman's daughter, a very young daughter, and all she did is she put a fork in front of me, but it looked like I could reach out and grab the fork. I mean, it was that big. And I said, tell me something about forks in the house. I wanted to hear you're buying new ones or something like that. She said, today I actually counted them. We bought a set of 36 forks, and now there's only 6. So today I was going through the forks saying, where are they going? What's happening to them?
Right.
But yeah, she said forks she actually counted them. And the daughter was seeing it. The daughter saw it. And during the reading, wanted to talk about it.
So basically, yeah, that was that confirmation that it's.
So sometimes my symbols are real life, and I cannot tell them apart from real life. And like the earrings, there's no difference. I love it. It is fun.
And how about dreams? Do you ever have any dreams, or is it usually only when you're awake?
Only when I'm awake. I don't. And this is odd, but a lot of dreams I have, in the dream, they'll say, he's a medium, in the dream. And it's kind of weird, like, all right. And then I go, oh yeah, I can do that stuff. And then I kind of question whether it's real or can I really do it or whatever. And then they kind of reassure me. And, then you wake up and go, wow, that was another odd dream about. And I do remember not too long ago, well, right after my divorce, I remember having a dream. And in the dream, I was fortunate enough to meet this woman that I'm kissing in the dream. And in the dream, I said to her, listen, I know we're both dreaming right now, but I said, but when you just kissed me, I could feel the warmth of your lips, the moisture. I could feel your skin. It felt like the real deal. I said, I didn't know dreams could be that realistic.
Huh?
And she said, oh, yeah, if they want it to be, then it will be. Then later I woke up and I went, boy, was that weird. But we were talking about the fact that I was dreaming,
Right.
and I was impressed with the dreaming that they were giving me, the imagery.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. That it's like so much more detailed than a regular dream.
It is.
Like
It is. Because I've always tried to analyze, are my dreams in color? Can I feel? Can I touch? Can I? And several dreams too. I don't know if other people get this, but I'm experiencing like weightlessness, where I'm learning how to like take a step and then project myself forward, and then take another step. And in the dream, I'm practicing going further and further and further with each step before I have to, push off again.
Right. And it's almost like
reoccurring. It's the same reoccurring dream, like
that
walking
people
on the moon, I guess.
that people do like in the dream state. Have you ever done anything, even though I'm thinking you, in a way, you do what they call remote viewing? Would you say that's part of the work you do as far as when you do the stuff?
Yes, I went to see a remember the movie came out, something about goats or falling goats?
And that something, the goats. I know which one. Yeah, I know which one.
Okay, when that first came out, I left Florida, went up to Philadelphia. I was doing a large group there.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know it, but in the audience was the person that movie was modeled after.
Really?
He in fact, his name was on the screen and everything.
Uh-huh.
So he went out to dinner with us that night when everything was over. And he said he was watching me closely. He said, I don't know if you know this. He said, but for several of the readings, he said, you were simply remote viewing. You were reporting on what a person had in their home and where it was situated. He said, the only difference between what I do and the way they did it is it might take them 3 or 4 days to get one image of one living room.
Okay.
And then they had to put it together. And this was interesting too. He said they would put them in a room where they had all these like safe deposit boxes, and only one would have an item in it. And they would sit there for up to 10 hours just looking at all the empty lockers. And at the end of it, they would say, which locker is it and what's in it? And some would get it right and most would get it wrong. But it was interesting to see how they trained for it. And I'm a strong believer in exercising the muscle of, the brain that does all the work for you, keeping the channel open.
You were saying that you did plenty of it while you were doing police work.
I did, and it seems like now we're with all the COVID and everything happening, I get more and more calls all the time. So keeping pretty busy with it. I just can't do the group readings anymore until all of this is settled down.
The internet and Zoom and
but it's not the same. You get in front of a large group and the funny things that will come out, and then the crazy things where I just blurt it out. And the way I operate too, when I do it,
what's he talking about?
I know when I do a large group, I usually base it on the first reading or two. That'll tell me how the night's going to go. And I remember one of the last groups I did, with everyone sitting there, I picked one lady out and I said, I want to start with you. I said, I don't know why, but I'm seeing the old Tarzan movies. I don't care about Jane. I don't care about Boy. I don't care about the monkey, but I really care about Tarzan. And it's got to be Johnny Weissmuller. Remember him?
Of course.
And her reply to the whole audience was, and I wanted to do the victory dance. Well, my mother used to date Johnny Weissmuller.
Oh,
it's like, yes.
I mean,
what I look for.
How? There's no way. It's like, well, he researched that, really?
Oh yeah, I hear that a lot. You were a cop. You know how to use those computers.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Are you kidding me?
Exactly.
I research nothing.
And that's another thing people don't realize, especially as time goes by. People's lives were not as documented as they are now, where everybody's taking a picture of everything.
Oh, I know.
I'm going here. I'm cooking this. This is something recent, way back. Nobody was doing that. People lived their lives almost, for lack of a better word, in anonymity, unless it was like an event, like a wedding, or something. But outside of that, nobody knew what was going on.
Well, when it comes to research, here's an issue too. I get it all the time where someone will book a reading, they use their credit card, and we schedule it. I
Mhm.
dial the number, and it's not even that person. They paid for it and booked it for a friend, for a family
Okay.
member. So if I did research the person with the credit card, what good would it do me?
Oh, so do you think they do it on purpose then, like to throw you
Some
off?
do. Some people think they're going to outsmart me. They really do. And all they're doing is hurting the reading. When you start putting negative energy on it, it's
Right.
like pouring water on a campfire. It'll fizzle out after a while.
Right. Yeah, it's like, because otherwise I imagine they would say, this is not for me, this is for this person, whatever. Let's say if you wanted to go ahead
Some
and
do. Yes, some do. They're upfront with it, and I say, great. But and I as a medium, I'm left in the same spot. Well, now I've got their first name and a
Mhm.
phone number, but that's all I've got. And
Right.
I don't want to research it. It would take all the fun out of it. It wouldn't, and it's so dishonest. Why would you do that?
Exactly. But
And when you start going down the list of everything on their Facebook, it's going to be a little obvious that's what you're doing.
of course, and I think sometimes these people, and there's nothing wrong with being a skeptic, because in life you have to be a skeptic up to a certain point. It's for certain things. But I think they're almost afraid of being proven wrong, because then that opens the door to like, whoa, what
I,
else? Life after death?
I just went through that recently, and I can say this part of it on the air.
Sure.
I did a reading for the wife of a state trooper. Her husband died on duty during a high-speed chase, and this is in another state, so I know nothing about this guy.
Right.
One of the troopers booked the reading for the wife, knowing it would help her.
Mm-hmm.
So along with giving, and I've got to keep her her attention for a full hour when I do a reading. That's a lot of data. That's a lot of information. But here's one thing, and she recorded it and sent it to me. I asked her, I said, he's telling me something about a clock or a watch that's not working. Does that make sense? And she said, well, yeah, there's a watch. I want to give my husband's watch to my son, but it needs a new battery. So that's not working. So even that alone is pretty cool that he's in spirit and he knows that. And I think I'm done with that piece. I said, look at the face of the watch. He's telling me it stopped a little after 10 o'clock. And she said, well, what number is he showing you? I said, well, to be honest, I'll take anything after 10 up until 11 and be happy with it, because that's still remarkable. But he's
Right.
showing me 10:15. And she went real quiet and she said, well, that's his badge number, 10:15.
Oh.
Yeah, that's what I did. I said, okay. And then, hold on, Chuck, let me get the watch. And she got the watch. It stopped at 10:15. And one thing about that, if you're a skeptic,
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing. One guy said to me that I probably looked up his badge number or whatever, because, when I mentioned it to a certain person,
Right.
I said, yeah, you're right. I looked up his badge number. Then I had to get on a plane, go up to New England, find her house, break in, find the watch, which is in her pocketbook, which is going to be pretty hard. And I had to set the stopped watch to 10:15 and then get back in a taxi, go back to the airport, fly back home. Also, I could give her that 1-minute message.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
But yeah, there's people like that. That's an easier explanation, but they don't extrapolate it the way you just did. They just think, oh yeah, sure. Like, yeah, he probably found out that this guy's badge is 10:15, but it's like, yeah, you're forgetting the part about the watch where
I
it's
know. And how amazing is this? She has the watch in her possession,
That's incredible.
put it in her purse. She didn't notice 10:15 being
Right.
the badge number. He's in spirit and knows, hey, that's my badge number.
Yes.
Or he adjusted the watch to 10:15.
After the fact. Wow.
So either way, you've got quite a thing to try to figure out here,
So basically, and this is the thing, sometimes I imagine for people like that, when they lose a loved one, so I don't know, so quickly. In other words, it's not a disease and illness where people like progressively get worse and they're going to pass away. This goes from one day to the next. Is that thing that like the comfort of knowing, okay, this, first of all, there is an afterlife if they have any doubts, and that this person is okay, as far as that there's some type of connection, I guess is what I'm saying.
That's because I experienced it myself. I told you things started happening for me, and they started re-happening once I was on the police department. And being in Salem, why not go for a reading to find out if it's real or not?
Sure.
So I was off duty one day, and I went into one of the shops, and I'll never forget, because as I walked in and wanted to go into the room, the woman going to give the reading, her partner was going to set me up in the room, and he sat me down to give me the preliminary, like, here's the way I want you to do it and all that. And then he said, do you mind if I touch you? And I thought it was kind of weird. And he reached over and he says, you're blocked in here. And he was running the back of his hand up and down on my sternum, up in that area. He knew I was a cop. He thought I had a wire on. And maybe I was getting ready to bust them.
Makes you wonder, what were they doing there?
And I'm thinking, this isn't fair. I'm not being treated right here. But anyway, then the woman came in, gave me the reading, and some of the stuff she got, I wouldn't give her any clues. I wouldn't give her any help. And I'm embarrassed to say I even did this to her, where she started it off. She said, well, your mom's got her hands together, and there's a little present with a little gold bow on it. And she's saying, here, give this to Chuck, a little present. And I said, oh, that's nice. I didn't tell her that day happened to be my birthday. And if you're doing a reading and the medium gets it right, they're fueled by positive energy. They're going to be less subjective as they look at the material they're getting. They're going to be more open. And then they figure, I can get a couple wrong now. I've got all these right. So they're more free in what they give you. But the beauty of the whole reading, she got a lot of things right, almost all of it. But it wasn't until I'm leaving the room and she said, hey, Chuck, if you have another reading, come and see me. I really like your mom. And then I'm going, yeah, $50. I guess that's what you want. You want me to come back. Because, that was the attitude I had at the time.
Yes.
But then she blew it, or she changed everything. She said, okay, good. Because I really like your mom and I love her British accent.
Oh.
And mom's from England. And there's no way that I would mention that or give her that. And mom lived in, her whole life down here in Florida, not up in Salem where this happened. So it's not like they knew my family tree or my family. And I sat back down at the table. I said, say that again. I said, you can actually hear her voice? Oh, yeah, she's been talking the whole time.
What?
So
you kind of admitted you finally gave her a chance that you were right.
We became very good friends after that. In fact, I still contact her once in a while. She's got one of the shops, it was the leading shop in Salem for a while. You probably even went right by it, when you were visiting.
I remember I went by so many shops, and there was this, when you go there the first time, you're overwhelmed because it's everywhere you go, there's, that theme of, everything, and
people walking around with the costume. And Are you aware of Lori Cabot?
Yes, of course.
Okay. She was pretty much a friend of mine, but there were times when there was a place called Red Sandwich Shop. I think it's still there.
Okay.
And when I worked at the old police station, which was next door to the sandwich shop, we would go in and have lunch, a few of the guys that I worked with. But it was so funny to have us sitting there and sitting at the table. Lori would come in and sit at the table with us. So now you got your tourists coming in, taking pictures and looking and going, oh my God, look at the witch having lunch with the cops,
Yeah, it's like I said, hey, don't worry.
But to us, she was one of us. She was one of our friends. She was.
Let me tell you something. I'm telling you, I wonder how many albums or you're in there. Thing, you're more well known than you think. And let me ask you, Chuck. Like you said, now what happens? Let's say, do you ever have when somebody contacts you from another country? What is it? You get an interpreter, or they get an interpreter? If there's a language barrier, and I guess my question is, if let's say the victim or whatever, let's say they're trying to find somebody, just like you said in Germany, and there's a difference in language. What is it? They just show you more symbols, or how does that work?
And in this case, the young man was from Texas, so
okay. Right.
So the victim or the kid, that died
Uh-huh.
in the family. In fact, it was all over the news. I first saw it on Nancy Grace, that
Okay.
case. And then I had given a reading to someone. And you know what was funny is when I called in, they had me on speakerphone,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the women received a text. And the text was something like, "You are on the phone with a medium right now. Just know that he works with God." And there was no way that woman, who was a friend of the family, she didn't know why she sent the text or anything, but they read it to me and they said, "We know her. We're going to find out why she sent it." But she said to trust what he's got to say. He's working directly with God. And she didn't even know that they had contacted a medium. So it's kind of
What?
weird the way that the word traveled like that.
Yes. Yes. So, in other words, for you, there's no barrier if we're talking somebody that's from another country.
No, no. When I first went international and did the Skype thing,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't sure about that, but it was kind of cool that people could book and they'd get on the calendar, set up the time and the date. So the first one I get is a lady in Japan. And
Okay.
I'm looking at their sheet going, "Oh God, I hope she speaks English, because I'm going to be in a lot of trouble here."
Uh-huh.
I get her on and she spoke broken English.
Okay.
And then it was so funny. I said, "I don't know if I can talk with the husband because what if he's Japanese, and I can't." And the first thing I said, "I'm seeing the state flag of Texas, big as anything." And her words were, "Well, my husband that died, that's why I'm having the reading, is from Texas."
There you
So who
go.
would think that a lady in Japan is married to a Texan? So, it's like, okay, that works. And we did the whole hour with no problem.
And you know what? And I'm also thinking, imagine maybe even those people that are in another country will contact you, those possible skeptics, like saying, well, he's in another country altogether, so there's no way he could
Oh,
know,
good idea. True,
come
true.
behind and have gotten behind our backs and gotten all this information because he's not even here.
Believe me, if I'm doing a reading, it's 100% pure. If I know anything at all about a case before a person before I do it, I let them know what I know.
Okay.
I'll tell them, "Well, I know your sister or brother, and I already know this or I know that." I'm right up front with it. I'll even go this far. There is one thing I do cheat a little. Now you're listening, right? Like, oh, what's he do? If they're in, say, Israel or something like that,
Mhm.
and once they've paid and I've got their address,
Right.
I have to Google it and just look at the satellite picture. I just want to know, what is their world like? I'm not
Okay.
getting any information, but I'm getting a good feeling of how life is where they live. And
Okay.
sometimes it's really intriguing. Like they might be on a small island where they're the only one on the island. You never
Right.
know, And I've had some amazing contacts, and
I bet. Very unusual, I'm sure.
even
Things.
I hate to say it. No, I don't hate to say it, and I don't want to get into the personal side of it, but it was John Lennon, for a family member of John Lennon,
Really.
and I didn't know that when they called. They booked the reading, and I just said, "Why am I seeing the biggest keyboard I've ever seen in my life? This person you're wanting to contact has nothing but music around him. Music, music, music." And I said, "I see him singing into a microphone. I see." It just kept going on and on. And then finally they said, "That's my, family member, John Lennon." So I never know. I never know who I'm going to read. And
That must talk about left field.
oh yeah. And the one story that I've told every show, because it's my favorite, where two women booked a reading, sat down in front of me in my home, know nothing about them. They were so secretive. All I knew was her name was Lovey. And I thought, as they're sitting there, I look to the right and there's an empty sofa against that wall, just sitting there. But when I turned my head, I let two people in to the office, but now I've got three. There's a woman sitting there, clear as a bell. She's even got the black hat on with the little, what's that veil in front of it that they used to wear back in the day?
Mm-hmm.
And she's sitting up nice and straight with her purse in her lap and telling me how she died and everything else. Then I'm relaying it to the girls. Everything is fitting. And I'm going, "Oh, wow, I've kicked it up a notch. This is great. I love it. I love it." Until I heard, "Hey, Chuck, tell him I'm here," in a real deep, raspy voice.
Oh.
And I said, "I know that voice." And I turned and looked. The woman is sitting next to Ray Charles. And I'm looking at Ray Charles and I said, "Oh my God, Ray, I said, I know who you are. I can't tell them you're here. They're going to get up and walk out. They'll think I'm crazy. And he says, no, no, no. But he's speaking to me just like you and I are talking.
Uh-huh.
He said, tell them I'm here. Tell them I'm here. They'll love it. They'll love it. So finally, I kept going between mom and the girls and trying not to look at Ray Charles. And that was hard to do. So finally, Lovey says, hey, Chuck, there's no one sitting on the sofa. What the heck are you looking at?
That empty space there. What is there?
I said, all right, I'm going to level with you. I said, I see your mom. She's very pretty. I described her. I said, I guess when you're in heaven, you can be around anyone you want to be around. And I guess she was a big fan of a certain music icon that he agreed to come down with her for the reading. And he's sitting next to her. And they're looking at me like eyes popping out of their head. I said, it's Ray Charles. I didn't know it, but the two girls are Ray Charles's real sisters.
What?
Yes. That's why they came to me. And think about it. Ray Charles went to the School for the Blind in St. Augustine.
I did not.
Mom grew up over in Jacksonville, and I even know the address where the house is, but I had no idea. And
Here you were thinking, how are they going to take this when I tell them Ray Charles is,
well,
you know?
For me, the beautiful part of the story is that, it's one thing to see him, connect with him.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of it, they went out to their car and brought in the family photo album with them standing next to their brother Ray at Christmas time and him working out. He was the first photograph is Ray Charles sitting on a riding lawnmower as a joke, because he can't see.
Right.
But the two sisters are behind them and the mother is behind the two girls. And even the mom is exactly what I'm seeing on my sofa.
Okay.
So for me to get to turn the pages, and I cherished every page. I'm touching history here. I'm touching a major icon. It was like, damn, why couldn't I have met him when he was alive? And of course, it never would have been that.
That's incredible. I'm sure you must have been thinking all that time, okay, how is this going to go down when I eventually say this?
So I never know when I book a reading. I never know. I never know where it'll take me. I never know what's going to happen. Some are, boring. Some are touching, and some are. You have to have a special mindset, almost like a cop has to be built a certain way to do that job properly. And even with all the stuff going on today with all the police, there are, as you know, good outweigh the bad. Sure. There are some bad apples, but you're going to find that in religion. You're going to find it in medical. You're going to find it in every field. There are bad apples out there.
Absolutely.
There's no way to get around it. But you don't find a bad doctor and then fire all the doctors.
Of course not. Of course not. And that's the thing. And, I've worked with, personally, my grandfather, may he rest in peace, he was a police officer. In my line of work, I work, and I still have very close personal friends who are police officers. And I can tell you, every one of them that I know, yes, like you said, you always have that one guy or that one is like, oh my God, but most of them really, truly care about what they do. They're not out there. As a matter of fact, a lot of times they do, if it demands, it puts their safety in peril to help somebody.
And the thing is to clean up the garbage in society. That's what they're working with.
Yes.
And there is a lot of sadness that that you have to deal with that the average person will never see.
Right. On a daily basis.
Yeah, on a daily basis. You never know. You're eating a lunch 1 minute and then you're at a death the next minute. It's like, or you're running after a bad guy, or you never know.
Yes. And I want to say also that a lot of people don't realize, that in police work, it's not just the crime thing, as far as that sometimes you're forced into situations where you see very sad things,
Yes.
That happens to human beings, and you're there, and it's not necessarily a crime per se, as in somebody's going to get arrested, but you see people living in circumstances or just things that happen that when you start seeing that day after day,
every day, yeah.
Let me tell you, it does take a toll on you, as far as people don't realize really what's involved with that type of work. For people to come back, and and do it, day after day. It's just not necessarily the, I want to say maybe like what a lot of people, when they see the TV shows and stuff like that, there's a lot of stuff that's what they call, I want to say, part of the daily grind, that eventually, it wears you down, as far as, in other words, it takes a special type of person to, especially like yourself. You did that for so many years. Okay.
Yeah, and then to move and come down here, I'm not really isolated, because I've helped with local police enough that most of them know me now anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget the time I was with my son, and a motorcycle cop pulled me over, and I went, "What are we doing?" And I said, "John, it doesn't matter. Maybe I've got a brake light out. Who knows? We'll see." Pulls me over, and he goes, "I just happened to be behind you. I ran your plate." He said, "My wife loves your book. Can I have you autograph it?" And he had it with him. Would I autograph the book? The psychic cop. Of course, he's a motorcycle cop, and on my the cover is me on my motorcycle. Right. So he thought that was the greatest thing to go home and show her. Here you go. I got him to sign it. He said he'd been carrying it for weeks, and he already knew what I was driving and where I lived and all that stuff. So it was cute. It was fun.
That is nice here. It's like,
psychic cop. I kind of don't like it, but I have to go back to. They gave me the name upstairs, and I'm sticking with it. So.
Don't you get officers who, after the fact, will tell you, "Hey, come over here. I got a story to tell you." I'm sure it's got to be someone.
Right. You won't do it in front of other people.
Oh, of course not. Are you crazy? No. No. Don't be anybody thinks, no, that guy's a real skeptic. He doesn't believe in none of this stuff.
Oh, yeah. And then what you run into too is one department may make arrangements for me to go help them with a crime. Mm-hmm. And then they say, "But look, we're going to claim we never talked to you."
Oh, of course.
And I said, "Well, wow.
What's
like for me,
Right. Like Mission Impossible will deny.
Yeah. I'll just slip out the back door, But it was like that when I was a patrolman anyway. You get a big bust or whatever, and then the detectives or the chief jump in and get all the glory, Same thing.
Go in front of the mics there and give the our department, yeah, you're like, yeah, all right, okay.
Yeah, I did that, not you.
It's like that. I guess it's part of the work and everything. And sometimes anybody has its good things also, when it comes to stuff like that. That's like, yeah, sure, take all the glory. That's great.
So many laughs, so many funny things would happen, and it was funny. Yeah, I loved it.
So,
no other job. I don't think there's any other job like it.
No, there isn't. There really, 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 really isn't. And yeah, I just think, technology, and this is for those people that have been living for at least, like more than 25 or 30 years. There's, people don't realize how technology has changed everything, especially police work, but overall everything. Like I tell everybody, there was once upon a time that not everybody was walking around with a cell phone, and by extension, a camera, and by extension, there was a time where, I remember those answering machines, like now everybody's like on demand, I called you, why didn't you answer? And I say, once upon a time, none of that existed. It was great.
Remember the movies in black and white, and if they showed a restaurant scene and this guy's really important, he's a doctor, and he gets a phone call, they would walk over with a serving tray with a black wired phone on it, with a long cord on it, and bring it over to the table. But you were a big deal if they brought the phone to your table, that you had to accept a call while you're eating. That was a big deal.
Yes, it was. And I tell everybody, once upon a time, you maybe had like maybe one or two phones in the house, and they were wired, and that was it. There was no answering machine. And if somebody called and nobody answered, guess what? They would just call back later the next day.
Sure. And now you can screen it at least.
Right. But, everybody gets that thing, like even my kids, sometimes I'm outside and I don't have pockets, so I'll leave my phone here because I don't want to. I'll get back, Mom, I called you. Why didn't you answer? It's like, because, hello?
That's what I do.
I can't help it. I don't have a pocket and I'm not going to walk, but yeah.
I'll do that. I'll say, I'm going to go out back, sit by the pool, have a sandwich, leave me alone, and
exactly. Yeah.
It's the best thing for you.
That you're on demand all the time. It's like, and I remember And then, then it definitely had its upside, less stressful sometimes in some instances.
I
Anyway,
know.
Chuck, I want to thank you so. It's been great to speak to you. It's let me ask you just for our podcast listeners, because I'm going to have a link to your website on the credits of the show. What is a website that people can go to if they want more information about you or to book a reading, etc.?
Sure. You can actually Google The Psychic Cop, the name of my book, and it'll
Okay.
take you to the website. Or you can put in Chuck, CHUCK, Bergman, B as in boy, BERGMAN.com, and that'll take you to the website. And there are a couple of really good videos, and you can watch on the face of the website that are pretty good. And then, a calendar if you want to book a reading, and plenty of testimonials from people. And there's one too you might want to read. One of the pages, it's called Your Honey Story. And what this is, it's down there in Miami where you're at. Okay. It was a lady who didn't believe in this stuff at all. And then when her daughter passed away, and this is the part I think you're going to appreciate, she wrote a story about what it was like to get that call, what it was like to go to the emergency room, not knowing if her daughter made it or not, and going through the whole process of losing a child. And then how shortly after the funeral, someone said that they had seen me and recommended me. And she was brave enough to get in her car, drive up to Jacksonville. And her and I have become very best friends. I'll even go down and visit with her on occasion. And she's shown me all around Miami and the whole area and stuff. And I
was born and raised in Miami, and I moved away from Miami like 6 months ago.
Oh, did you? Where are you now? What part?
I'm right by Gainesville. I'm not too far from you.
Where are you?
Right next to Gainesville, a little bit south of Gainesville.
Yeah, I thought you were still down in Miami. Okay.
No. After, like I said, I saw that city grow up and everything, but it's just too much traffic, too many people moving in there.
Absolutely. It is. I go down there and it's
the density, the traffic. It was like, how you always before you had rush hour traffic in the morning or in the afternoons. Now you got rush hour traffic all the day.
It's ridiculous there. If you have to go through there and try to get down to Key West, for instance, it's almost impossible.
Even there was a back road, which was Chrome Avenue, that would take you right into the Keys. And I moved towards the end west of, which was before what was old Miami's agricultural area since like the turn of the century. And even that, once they ran out of the developers, they kept going west.
Oh, no.
And and it was like, okay, this is my cue to like leave. But I don't do that well with snow.
So Gainesville is a pretty nice area.
It's very nice. It's beautiful out here.
I unfortunately had a heart issue and had to go to the big hospital there.
Oh, really?
So I know that I learned the area a little bit, but I'm up in Middleburg and I love it. It's just quiet. I can go all day and not even hear one car go by.
Yeah, and that's the thing and people think, and it's like, yeah, all right, whatever. Once upon a time, but there comes a point where, what? Peace and quiet is a wonderful thing.
It is.
It's a wonderful thing, so that's where I'm at. And yeah, it's been a great move. And that's why my audience has heard me complain because the packing, the unpacking, and, we sold our property very quickly in Miami. And it was one of those, like, you mean I got to go, what? Yeah, one of those things. That does still settle. So it's been, but it was a good move. It was, and we're happy. And even though, what was it? The trauma of moving. Like I tell everybody, if you mention that word to me, I'm gonna punch you in the mouth.
God, if I had to move, I don't know how I would categorize this stuff or box it. I don't know. I don't know how I can do it.
I tell everybody. First of all, we moved from a larger place to a smaller place, but besides that, that's when you really truly realize how much junk you accumulate. And by this, I'm not a hoarder. I don't, but I'm just saying, just stuff that you realize.
You're a hoarder. Look at your background compared to mine. No, you're not. It's not stacked up. It's not, out of control.
But yeah, when you start thinking, I got to pack all this stuff. Oh my God.
Yeah. Dishes, pots and pans, everything. And I've got a double car garage, so I got a lot of stuff out there. And but I am not a junk collector. Fortunately, I am not.
But you know what? That's what I tell them. If you would have told people maybe 20 or 30 years ago that storage spaces were going to become one of the number one businesses, they'd be
I
like,
know.
your house? What? What for? It's like, yeah. Again, thank you so much. It has been absolutely wonderful to speak to you, Chuck. And I want to wish you the best of luck in any new projects that you have coming up. And it has been absolutely great. I love speaking to you.
It was fun talking with you, and I can't wait to listen to some of the other podcasts I saw on your website. I'm going to check them out when I have time.
Absolutely. And I hope you'll come back and we can discuss more of your case.
I'd love to. Who knows what new stories I'll have by then? Maybe even a third book. I'm thinking about putting one more.
I was about to ask you that. Have you considered maybe another book?
I have, but I got to let things slow down a little because there's so much going on around me right now. But I think there's a lot to tell the people, and people love to read. They love to know what's going on.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's a never ending, like teaching and learning, and it's just amazing. I can't imagine life without knowing what I know about spirit. I can't imagine it.
And it's one of those things that, and the reason why I want to point it out real quickly is that unfortunately some people think of psychics or ESP intuitives like being woo-woo, like, oh, this person's walking around like always in a daze and, whatever, out of touch. And it's like, not really. You'd be surprised who's that psychic.
You're right. And I take a great pride in going places where no one recognizes me, and I just go through. But locally, they know me from, I've been on newscasts and stuff like that, and I was on A&E for quite a while. Plus, the History Channel kept running a show on me, so a lot of people know me from that, and they're just interested in the field. But then again, you still have the ones that are laughing behind your back, and the others that really get it. So
the ones I'm telling you, the most hardcore skeptics, I think, are the ones that they're just afraid of.
I think so. Yeah.
Getting the possibility that there is truth to it, and then what else comes with that?
I learned from John Edwards. He said on one of his shows, when they asked him, they said, "How do you handle people who don't believe in what you do?" He said, "I don't care." He said, "Let them believe in anything they want to believe in. I will not give them my energy. I'll take that same energy and give it to someone else that's standing in line waiting to talk to me."
Absolutely.
And I love that because that's so true. Why would you try to convince someone when they're only going to laugh at it anyway, or they're going to try to win the argument, so
there's no convincing them. And
believe in what you believe in. But one day they'll learn the truth. They'll know there's more to it.
Absolutely. Again, Chuck, thank you so much. It's been wonderful. Take care.
Thank you for having me on. I've really, really enjoyed it. Fun night.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Take care.
I hope you liked it. I loved speaking to Chuck. And I'm sure there's cases that he won't talk about because, anonymity, I mean, confidentiality and things like that. But wow, I bet he's got some great stories, whether from when he was a cop. And you know what? And I've said this before, people don't realize that in that world of whether you're for first responder, which cops are, or 911, firemen, paramedics, they see a lot of unusual things, but maybe now not so much. And even then still, all kidding aside, this is one of those things that you kind of like keep under wraps when you have experiences or you see things or you hear things and you're like, and maybe you'll trust maybe a couple of good friends. And even then it's like, but if anybody ever asks you, it's like, no. You deny all knowledge because you do see a lot of unusual things as far as things having to do in the paranormal world, intuitions, warnings, same thing. I've heard a lot of stuff of people seeing things when they've gotten to an accident, that they sometimes see people standing or a person standing there like a shadow of a person. It turns out this person just passed away in one of the accidents. And, when they get there, they don't realize who they're seeing. Or, sometimes you get a group of people that maybe one or two even of the people that they think are real turn out not to be. real per se. It's only later on that they realized that what they were looking at was the spirit of a person that had just passed away. And in just to give you his point of reference, The Sixth Sense, I'm sure most people have seen it. Towards the end of the movie, when that bicyclist got killed, and all of a sudden the kid is seeing, which only he can see, the cyclist looking in through the car window at him. And to him, it looks like a solid person. There's quite a lot of first responders that have that experience. And sometimes they don't say anything because it's like, I have one of the shows, I think the title of it is Alone with a Ghost, and I was speaking to a police officer, and she was saying how there was a house that there was a murder-suicide at. She heard the department that she works at is not that big. It's a smaller department. And there was a murder-suicide that took place at that house. And afterwards, they've never sold it. It's never been rented, but it's maintained. But anyway, to make a long story short, they keep getting 911 calls at the station originating there, even though it's completely empty. And they said that they had even, at one point, they were trying to figure out like what's going on here. They called, I think it was the telephone company, confirmed that there was no active phone service there. There was nothing there. And there was nobody living there. And this, of course, what was there was a landline. Because, a lot of people realize that once upon a time, a lot of people had landlines, as in connected. It wasn't a cellular service. So it's very easy to determine this is the actual address, the point of origin where this call is coming into to the 911 center. And they had, it was well known that they would get calls coming in from a house that was totally empty and nobody was there. How do you explain that? And it happened on more than one occasion. It happened for quite a while. I can't remember now if it had stopped, but yeah. And the things like that along those lines do happen more often than people think. And I want to say sometimes part of what Chuck was describing, that in that type of work, whether you want to call it instincts of survival, you develop your intuition, you develop those skills, you develop a level of vigilance that, like he said, you might be eating lunch or you might be doing something, and anybody looking at you would think they're not paying attention, and you are paying attention. And you're picking up, even if it's on a subconscious level, you're picking up on a lot of different cues of what's going on around you. Because in some cases, it's going to determine if you live or die. I mean, I know it sounds dramatic and over the top, but yeah. So in other words, you do it unconsciously. It's not like you decide you're going to do it after a while. And then part of that observation is what he said, as far as that you start listening to your gut. Because a lot of times people will have intuition or warnings or, like, don't go down that street, go down. And they that's, man, my imagination. I'm imagining things, and they disregard it. And I think at that line of work, after you've had a couple of experiences where you're actually right. I mean, you don't go around saying, guess what? I knew that was, you just keep it to yourself, but it cuts to the point where you trust it, where you don't disregard it. You don't play it off. It's my imagination, and you're like, okay, so nobody needs to know about that. Hey, I know that, like he was saying, that something's going to happen in that area, and I'm just going to work my way slowly over there. And my dispatch is going to wonder how it was that I knew, that I was so close or whatever, because you do have an instinct about those things. And after a while, you learn between just something that doesn't mean anything to, I guess we'll say, I hear a lot of people ask, well, how do you know when you were getting, I don't want to say a message, because that's not it, but what they call a gut feeling or an intuition or stuff like that, versus my just imagining this. And I want to say that it's, after a while, you know how to differentiate. And a lot of the times you get it when you when you kind of like zone out a little bit, like, you just kind of like, sometimes you not veg out, but there's moments in time that despite our thing of multitasking and thinking of a million things that you kind of zone out a little bit. Sometimes that's when these intuitions come in. It's almost like it takes this second. Oh, you finally stop doing your to-do list. Zap, here it is. Do you feel that? Do you hear that? Do you, or like he said, where he saw that, like that movie thing kind of play out when that truck took out all these poles. Well, it wasn't the poles, it was the electrical, but it was a bad pole, that he saw it like a mini movie. After a while, you realize that's your intuition, that's your gut, and you follow it. And at the end of the day, if you think about it, what's the worst that could happen? You have this intuition and nothing happens. Nobody needs to know. Or, and I've said this before, let's say you have a feeling, whatever. I'm not going to go down the street, and you don't. Maybe you're going to work and you have a certain route that you take. And then that one day you said, I'm not going to go down that route. I'm going to go down this alternate, whatever. And you actually do it. And let's say you might have avoided a very bad accident, but how would you ever know that you dodged that bullet? There's no way for you to ever quantify and say, hey, you know what? That intuition, that intuitive flash I got actually was on the money. Unless maybe you later on find out, oh, there was a real bad accident in that corner. But even then, a lot of times you never find out. Or what if you are, sometimes things are avoided just because one of the parties is not there. You see what I'm saying? And I'm sure everybody's heard stories about people deciding at the last minute, I'm not going to take that flight, things like that. And again, and I said it before, how many, and I know, let's say in a plane crash, how many of those people that got on that plane did have some type of intuition or some gut feeling that they shouldn't go on the flight, and they never did or told anybody about it? How could you ever find that they could come back and say, I knew I shouldn't have gotten on that plane, or I knew I shouldn't have done that? There's no way for people to quantify it and say, the only ones that live to tell the tale is the ones that live to tell the tale. But anyway, guys, I hope you like the show. Like I've told you guys before, I've got a lot of interesting guests. Some of the old guests are coming back, new guests like Chuck, and I'm hoping he's going to come back and tell us more stories. I'm hoping he's going to do another book. And again, I totally agree with him. Skype and Zoom or whatever, internet's great, but there's something to be said when you can do a conference like with people, live people, like. So hopefully that you'll be able to do that soon. And yeah. And again, if you've got stories, go to MiamiGhostChronicles.com and you can send me an email. There's ways to reach out to me. There's links to podcast versions. There's links to you can find us on as far as the videos are concerned, just about anything, on any of the books that I'm working, etc., etc., etc. So again, don't forget, wherever it is that you find us, go ahead and subscribe and like it, or if there's that option. So at the very least, if you subscribe, you're going to get notification of when I'm releasing a new show. So again, take care. It was great to spend this time with you. Bye-bye.